Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I am a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. I am still rallying. I am not giving up. I feel the same, but my husband and I agreed last night that I need to start journaling. Really minute by minute what I'm doing and what's triggering my head. So I started doing that last night and I immediately started to uncover some things that I have been doing that I'm well aware trigger my head, but I'm doing them anyway. And I think without writing that down, I haven't been accountable for doing these things that I shouldn't be doing. So the three things that have come to mind immediately are I've been obsessing about looking at houses at a lake community that I am interested in moving to. And so I was checking like every day throughout the day, checking to see if new houses were on the market. And then if there were not, I would go back and look at houses I've already looked at, which requires me to scroll through the pictures of the houses. And then if there were new houses, I would scroll through those pictures. And as you know, you are well aware that I cannot scroll on a device. It's very triggering for me. But I was doing it anyway because I was obsessing about something that I wanted to do. And this is difficult. It's difficult to say no to myself when there's something that I want to do. I've talked about it so many times, and yet I still do it. And although mine has to do with my stroke symptoms, my post-stroke symptoms, I think this applies to so many of us that have a hard time saying no to ourselves when there's something that we want to do, but we know we shouldn't. I mean, just imagine it, or maybe it's not what we shouldn't do, but it's not good for us. It's not going to make us be the best version of ourselves. I mean, just imagine it applies in so many different areas of our lives. It applies to even just staying up late. How many of you want to stay up late and watch TV? It's as simple as that. And you find yourself going to bed at midnight. And then you wake up in the morning and you're like, and you're regretful about doing it. Well, drinking is an obvious one, but so many, you want to eat chocolate. It's not going to be good for you. Maybe you eat too much and you have a headache. I had somebody in my meeting this morning that shared about just having an extra piece of lasagna for dinner last night and then having, I can't remember, something like one too many cookies or something like that, and then woke up with a headache. So it happens in our lives just across the board. And that's what I'm dealing with, is saying no to myself when there's something that I want to do. So looking at houses, the next one is when I go on social media to post my episodes, I get caught up in looking at other people's posts. And the reason why is because I really want to grow my network on social media because it will increase the visibility of my podcast. But I need to remind myself that yes, the purpose of this is to reach out to people and to help other people, but I need to do that without risking my own well-being. And that takes a lot of self-restraint to go onto social media just simply to post and not look at what other people are posting. It's difficult, but that causes scrolling. I have to scroll to see what other people are posting, and that's a big no-no for me. And then finally, what was the other thing my morning meetings. I had decided that it was okay for me to turn my camera on during my morning meetings. Um, and I would just look away from the camera. That way I could feel a little more like I'm a part of. Well, that's all fine and good if I can control myself from looking at the screen, but I can't help it. I want to look at the people who are talking. So, I started turning off my camera again this morning, and I already felt better when I walked my dogs this morning, not having been on 2 hours of kind of glancing at my phone to see who was sharing. So these are just three examples of what I have been doing, and not being consistent about my self-care. And it's frustrating, I'm not going to lie. It's something that I want to progress. I want it to get better, but it just doesn't get better. I can't seem to train myself to adapt to scrolling on the screen. It just doesn't work. I can scroll really slow, like almost like you can't even notice that it's scrolling that slow, to train my brain to allow to scroll, but that doesn't work. I've been trying to like vision therapy type things, because I've been to vision therapy and practicing those slow movement, but it just doesn't seem to change anything over all this time. So as much as like at work, when I went back to work for a couple of years and I was trying to progress as the doctors told me to, I kept increasing what I was doing, but my body, my brain was not increasing the threshold of what I could withstand. Um, so if my body's not listening to me, I have to stop doing it. I have to stop progressing if my body's not progressing with me. Yeah. So, I am again recording early because my brain is the best in the morning. I do still feel 1 out of 10 for dizziness. I'm about an 8, which is why I keep closing my eyes, and I'm very much trying to control not moving my eyes around while I talk, and I'm not looking at the camera. So that's what's going on. So I'm going to try to get back to doing these episodes. We'll see how I can get back into it if I'm restraining all of these other things that I'm doing. So today I wanted to talk about what I heard in my meetings this morning, which is about treating each other or seeing each other as human beings. Um, we were talking about how step 8 and 9 introduced, or actually, this is what I heard this morning. We just read the daily reflection, and this is what I heard. What was said may have been different than what I heard, but what I heard was step 8 and 9 introduced me to, it opened the door to me seeing other people as human beings, as vulnerable. People have their own struggles, insecurities, and fears. And my recovery, working the steps, has taught me not only that this exists, that other people are human. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but really, um, I can't be unique in feeling like I'm the only one who's got all these struggles and insecurities and fears because everybody else looks so brave and strong. But it's just not true. Everybody has insecurities and struggles and fears. And my program has helped me to recognize the humanity in other people. So I wanted to talk about how steps 8 and 9 introduced that to me, and how I carry that forward in my days. So when I first approached steps 8 and 9, I swear throughout steps 1 through 7, I just kept looking at those words in steps 8 and 9 and was filled with anxiety about, okay, this is going to happen. At some point, I'm going to have to make a list of people that I've harmed and be willing to make amends to them all. And that alone just felt like I can't. I mean, that thought alone would make me want to drink. Like, I'm not willing, you know? Well, I was looking forward and I needed to stay in the step that I was in. I needed to stay in the day that I was in. That importance of living in the day is just the significance of that is far beyond what can be expressed by words. It's not just to not crave a drink, to manage the urge to drink. It's not just that. It's let me manage what I'm doing today, what I'm engaging in today, and see how I can inject the steps and the principles that I've learned in the program into what is happening right now in my life. And what I didn't expect is how these steps and how implementing what I was learning into the moments in my day were cracking open the door of me just seeing the world differently, seeing other people differently. And it just brought a new light, a new comfort, really. It made me feel not so alone, not just with other people suffering from alcoholism, but other people, because other people are suffering. They just are. And I'm not going to be privy to everybody's struggles. I'm not going to know what is going on with everybody. The importance is recognizing that there is something going on with everybody. Everybody had a childhood that they could have been damaged in. Everybody has relationships that they could have been damaged in, you know? And that environment that all of us uniquely experience impacts who we are today and how we treat each other. So by cracking that door and acknowledging the humanity of others, I'm able to just look at my role and making amends. And that doesn't mean I heard today how it was expressed that making amends is not apologizing. And I was never quite sure what that meant, but somebody worded it today that apologizing is a verbal expression of regret, I guess. And amends is action, is taking the action to nurture and find solutions for. So the steps before steps 8 and 9 gave me the courage to speak honestly and offer these sincere conversations and taking responsibility for my actions, not promising to do better, but to become better, to not verbally express what I'm gonna do, but just do. Um, and so by starting to make these amends, I was able to see that other people are not the frustration that I deal with in my life. It's it's my reaction to other people that is my frustration. Um, it's how my struggles, fears, and insecurities clash against their struggles, fears, and insecurities. Before, I was so focused on how other people impacted my life, how other people's actions butted up against my struggles, my fears, and my insecurities. Um, and how they were kind of fighting against the way that I was protecting myself from those things, whether they were annoying me, which somebody annoying me is not their problem, it's my problem. Somebody hurting me is, I have control over how I'm going to react to that, how I'm going to respond to that, how I'm going to pause and do something about my relationship with them. If other people don't live up to my expectations, I have a choice to not have them be a part of my life. It's not something that's out of my control. You know, I can't change that person, but I can change their impact on my life. So recovery has helped me to shift my perspective. And somebody mentioned this morning, each person that I pass on the street, that I interacted with at work, that calls me on the phone trying to sell me something, or that's dealing with my disability insurance, these doctors, everybody is a child of God and deserves to have the same respect and grace and kindness that I seek for myself. So I really liked hearing that today, because that is so easy to forget, especially there's a guy in my neighborhood that I cannot stand. I don't think he's a nice person. I don't like the way he like shouts at people across the street. Like, here's an example. He's walking his dog, which is not on a leash, mind you, most of the time. I think somebody complained. So now when I see him, his dog is always on a leash, but it was a couple years before that happened. Anyway, I was standing with him because since we have dogs, that just is like a magnet for people to have to talk to me. And he's standing there talking to me, and somebody was across the street walking on the sidewalk, and she was on her phone, and she was like laughing, having a conversation. He shouted across the street at her to quiet down. It was broad daylight, middle of the day. He shouted at her, "Do you have to be so loud?" And I was just like, what is happening right now? Like, is she not outside? You can do whatever you want, lady. And I just don't want to be associated with that. I was talking to him another time, and there was a lady walking by with her child, and she went out of her way to walk really, really far around us. And he said, "You don't have to walk so far away," to her. And she said, "There's poop on the ground right there." And he started arguing with her about whether there was poop on the ground or not. And I was just like, I cannot. So now when I see him, I make it a point to either walk in another direction or tell him that I'm not going to talk right now. And that's it. You know, it's my it's my choice to engage with him or not. And sometimes it feels like it's uncomfortable to put up that boundary around ourselves because you don't want to be rude. Um, well, why would I not want to be rude to somebody who's really not a nice person to other people? I don't want to come across as not being nice to other people. So that's really what's going on with my head, but I don't have to look at it like that. I look at it as I'm drawing a boundary and this is my boundary. Um, and I'm not going to let him into it. So another thing I heard this morning was about the three C's: criticizing, complaining, or condemning, and how these reactions to other people were really a reflection of our own insecurity. And that's exactly right. Like, if I'm complaining about him, the only reason I'm complaining is because I'm too insecure and not feeling courageous enough to draw a boundary. That makes perfect sense to me when I look at it from that perspective. So, when I would, and I still do because it's progress, not perfection, criticize, complain, or condemn other people, I am thinking to myself that I deserve more. I am better. Yet underneath, I feel unworthy. I feel insecure. I'm fearful about something. So I'm at the same time that I'm criticizing, complaining, or condemning, I'm actually desperately searching for emotional security, and I couldn't find it. When I was drinking, I would go to the extreme and I was actually pushing people away and isolating. So those three C's: criticizing, complaining, and condemning, become defense mechanisms again. And that seems to be um, a trend that I've been falling back to over the past week, minus the few days that I've been just incapable of finishing a thought. But is this idea of protection and defense mechanisms. And these defense mechanisms just really isolate me further. So the beauty of my recovery program is that it has offered me a way out of all of these it's not the relationship itself, but the way that I engage in a relationship. I have a way out now from feeling fears, insecurities, doubt. I don't have to feel that way anymore. I have boundaries. I have more courage. I have humility and a whole lot of openness. So I'm personally not going to tell that guy in my neighborhood that he's an asshole. That's not what I have to do in order to break the cycle and be courageous and draw a boundary. I don't have to be aggressive. But what I can do is notice, recognize that this guy is a human being and he has his own history behind him. Whatever in the world has happened with him, he reacts to people this way. And if I don't interact with him, I don't have to be a part of that. He doesn't need to be a part of my life. There's so many human beings in the world. I can pick who I want to be a part of my life and who I don't. So back to making amends with people, because this was the beginning of being able to look at my relationships like that. And they weren't about just saying you were right and I was wrong. It was recognizing that I'm not the center of the universe, that each person in my life that I encounter has their own stories, their own pain, and their own journey. This is the role that I have played, you know, and if I have negatively impacted this person's life, they deserve my respect and grace to tell them, I noticed what I've done, and I'm taking steps in order to be a better version of me. And I just wanted you to know that. And they, they can accept that or they cannot accept it. That part's not my business. What other people think of me is not my business, Um, so that was just cracking open the door. And today I try to live by these principles, where each person I meet is a human being and deserves love and respect. If I run across somebody like this guy in my neighborhood that I truly feel does not deserve my love and respect, then I don't need to be a part of his life. I don't need to have him interact with him. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect, but if I'm finding myself falling into old habits of criticism and judgment, I have the tools to recognize that um, these behaviors are what makes me, are a part of my own insecurities, struggles, fears. They're icky. These behaviors are icky. And I can shift my perspective and remind myself that even the guy in my neighborhood is doing the best that he can. You know, I don't know what happened in his life, but he's doing the best that he can. And the best that he can is not, doesn't work in my life, you know. But I make mistakes too, and I'm not better than him. But I do have the courage to keep moving forward and defining my environment the way that I want it to be defined. So just to wrap it up, number one, I'm really excited that I was able to get through this whole episode with a cohesive story and thought. I do have it written down in front of me. I'm not reading it, but today was a win, honestly, for me to be able to put this together. So before it gets any worse, because I'm holding on by a thread here, um, I just want to stress that I'm going to continue to see other people as human beings. And that was one of the most powerful shifts that was introduced to me when I started to go to meetings and listen to how other people interact with people in their lives. It has allowed me to step out of my own insecurities and, number one, connect by sharing my experiences. And by trading that information, I feel like I'm a part of a community where we're all trying to practice principles, all of these principles in our affairs, with humility, respect, grace, and building stronger and more meaningful relationships, because that is the key to my recovery. As much as I thought that I needed to be independent as I got older, I am seeing that independence does not mean isolation. And as much as I want to isolate, over the past couple of days, I have felt terrible and I have not wanted to talk to people, but I have done so a little bit. I did not reach out to my family. I started to, and then I thought, I don't want to complain to them. I don't want them to feel sorry for me. And so I didn't. But I did reach out to my sponsor, and she's been so gracious to just check in on me throughout the day. And it's Saturday, so my husband is off of work, and I'm gonna practice staying off of digital devices, the way that I described at the beginning of the episode. And you know, I feel like a part of, when I have a plan for how I can start feeling better, and more than anything, being able to talk on this episode, you know, on this podcast, I feel like we are in this together, you know. I see all of us in this podcast, you listeners and I, as equals. And I need to practice that everywhere I go. Um, so that's what I was thinking about today in my meetings. And I really appreciate you listening today. Yay, 3 cheers. I was able to get through a whole episode with a cohesive thought in my head. So thanks for joining me on the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk to you tomorrow.